Shortstop is the strongest and deepest position in fantasy baseball right now, with legit superstars left and right, really reliable veteran options in the middle, and tons of super exciting prospects you guys really need to know before your fantasy baseball drafts. So I have over 20 shortstops right now that I'm going to rank on a tier list. If you guys are not already, please subscribe to the channel down below, and don't forget to drop this video a like. Also, let me know in the comments if you guys agree or disagree on some of these rankings. The position ranking tier list for fantasy baseball last year were really fun, so I wanted to run them back again. You guys love them. I love making them. Excited to do it one more time. And I will be getting to every single position in the league over the next 2 weeks, so be on the lookout for those. But shortstop is the best position. Shortstop's my favorite position. I really wanted to start there, and there's no other place to start than the obvious best shortstop in baseball, Bobby Witt Jr. Don't want to talk a ton about Witt because you basically have to have a top 3 or 4 pick to even get him on your teams. He's super worth it there. There's not many other players in baseball that can combine this hit tool, that power, that speed together. Like if he went 340 for you this season, I would not be surprised. I know last year was a down year, but kind of not really worried about that. The one thing I will say about Witt that kind of keeps him off that upper tier fantasy baseball players, basically just behind like Aaron Judge, Shohei Ohtani, and kind of depending on your draft room, Juan Soto, is that the home run power still hasn't been super consistent. Last year really lagged behind 2024. And a big reason for that is Witt is a guy that lets the ball travel. He likes to use all of his fields. He only had 3 opposite field home runs all of last year, but the balls he hit to the pull side, he really crushed. Tons of like 430, 440, 450 foot home runs. Maybe there's some kind of swing or approach tweak with Witt where he won't let the ball travel as deeply. He will go out and get it, and he'll prioritize pulled fly balls. Also for him, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Maybe the fences moving in at Kauffman Field allows that opposite field power to play up more. Still, don't worry about it. Unquestionable, top 5 pick in fantasy baseball. Easy. Now the next tier starts to get fun. 2 other guys coming off arguably down seasons last year in Gunnar Henderson, Elly De La Cruz. Starting with Gunnar, last spring training, he pulled his oblique, basically missed the whole time. Came back a week and a half into the season and just kind of felt like he was playing catch-up all of April. During that month, he only had 3 home runs, 3 stolen bases, and a 228, 268, 413 slash line. That's a puke fest. He played poorly. The Orioles kind of spun out. The whole season became a disaster after that. Gunnar was still really good for the rest of the season, had about the 125 WRC plus and played in a 25 homer pace. That was just far removed from the nearly 40 homers, 30 steals, and 900 OPS he had the season before when it looked like he was about to become just a regular top 5 player in the league. I think he gets back to that tier though. I just think the way that his season began last year and the Orioles season went after that, it kind of set him out of whack a little bit. The raw power is still there. The elite swing decisions are still there. The athleticism's obviously still there. He's a screaming buy to me, and a shortstop I really like to come out of my drafts with if I have a pick towards the back of the first round. Then we have Elly De La Cruz, who I think the world's kind of down on right now because the step forward just hasn't come yet. He felt a year behind the Bobby Witt Jr. trajectory, but he still hasn't really had that like boom right through the glass ceiling yet. Last year, he kind of regressed across the board. His raw power is still not seriously converting to game power. He hasn't eclipsed 30 home runs in the season yet. His batting average is still lagging. It went up in the 260s last year, but still based on his tools, shouldn't really be that low. His defense also took a step back, and he dealt with a lot of poor media because of that. And on top of this whole thing, he stole 30 fewer bases, which was a killer to you guys who play in rotisserie leagues who were expecting Elly to steal something like 50 or 60 bases after the nearly 70 the season before. But the funny thing about this down year for De La Cruz is that he finally got his strikeout rate down to a manageable spot. It was always either above 30% or sitting near 30%. Last year was close to league average. And a big way he got that strikeout rate low to that spot is that he really increased his contact rate against breaking balls, something that was kind of a hole for Elly before this. It genuinely feels like a hole was plugged, and maybe this is when Elly De La Cruz takes the step. He's still being drafted in a spot where you kind of need him to take the step. I'm always going to bet on a guy like Elly De La Cruz with his insane power, insane raw tools, insane speed to be able to take that step kind of any point whenever it happens. One other thing I do want to mention about Elly is that we have enough major league data on him to where a genuine trend has developed where he is such a better hitter from the left side compared to the right. As a right-handed hitter last season, he had a 277, 362, 486 triple slash line with a nearly 130 WRC plus. But from the right side, he was a 236, 276, 342 hitter with a 64 WRC plus. That's the difference between an upper echelon hitter and one of the worst hitters in the entire league right there. I don't know if there's an adjustment there, but I did want to point that out. He also had a nearly 150-point difference in his OPS on the home compared to on the road. It just seems like Elly is still a few clicks away from being the player we envision him to be, but I'm still drafting him to be that guy. The floor is higher than I think he gets credit for, and when the click comes, he's going to be one of the best players in the league, hands down. Now moving on to a really strong third tier that's still basically always going to be in the top 30 or 40 picks of your drafts. That's how strong the shortstop position is, but want to delineate my tiers based on just who the players are. We have Trey Turner, Francisco Lindor, Lindor, and Mookie Betts. Turner, first up, is coming off a very good season where he was in line to get really high-end MVP votes in National League before his strained hamstring knocked him out for the whole month of September. And he's still a very, very, very good hitter. He's going to run a high contact rate. It's going to lead to a very high batting average. He still makes very good swing decisions. He still is one of the fastest players in the league, even as he starts to move through his early 30s. But with that, it seems like the power ceiling on Trea Turner that there used to be in his prime is totally gone. The bat speed's trended down for 2 seasons in a row, and he doesn't really get close to barreling or lifting the ball like he once did. Again, it's fine. He's just a 20-homer bat now compared to a 30-homer bat. That's going to be with a near 300 batting average, 360 on-base percentage. He's a really, really valuable player in your points-based leagues just because of that low strikeout rate, high batting average, high on-base percentage. Going to get great counting stats and still a strong top of the Phillies lineup. Trea Turner's great. Then we have Francisco Lindor, who's moving down draft boards right now, and deservedly so, just because he's in jeopardy of missing opening day with a broken hamate bone in his left hand. And I think there's more optimism around Lindor's recovery from that hamate bone than most players, just because he's a switch hitter. He broke that hamate bone again, like I said, in his left hand. So that's going to affect him much more when he's hitting from the right side, because a lot of players break that hamate bone when they wrap their bottom hand around the knob of the bat. And the hamate bone's right here. It's a teeny tiny little hook on the end of this bone inside of your hand. Very difficult to heal, very painful, again, when it's digging into the barrel when you're hitting from the right side. But Lindor switches those hands and hits from the left side. It'll be very easier to mask and mitigate that pain. He's also a warrior. He's one of the most durable players in the league. He plays through lots of injuries, so we give him the benefit of the doubt for that. If he's on the field, he's a metronome, 30 home runs, 30 stolen bases, nearly 200 combined runs and RBIs, a 260 batting average, a 340, 350 on base percentage, one of the most steady, solid guys in the league. And every single year, Lindor goes through this kind of horrible spell, horrible cold streak. The Mets fans like me know that. Usually it's at the beginning of the year. Last year was in the middle of the season. And even with those cold streaks, he always manages to get his stats by the end of the season. So we should be confident enough in him for fantasy baseball, even with the spring training injury. Then I still had to put Mookie Betts in this tier just based on the legacy, based on the Hall of Fame reputation, even though he's coming off just a horrible last season. And we really kind of hope this isn't the end. And when I say horrible, it was really bad, especially for Mookie Betts' standard, basically by any top tier player standards. He had a 730 OPS, a career low 258 batting average. He was a league average bat without much power. That's not a guy who should be ranked among the top 6 shortstops with how strong this position is. And kind of sneakily, the fall off for Betts began happening 2 years ago. It was just masked by a lot of really good counting numbers still, because in that 2024 season, he still had an 860 OPS. And that still came when he had a hand fracture during the summer, but he came back for the end of the season and was a key cog in the Dodgers winning the World Series, was basically unstoppable in that playoff run. But at the same time, from that season compared to the 2023 season, his barrel rate was cut in half, his bat speed fell by over 2 miles per hour, and his 90th percentile exit velocity dropped like a rock to being above league average to way, way, way below league average. Those are clear indications that the power production probably will never be like where it was in Betts' prime going forward. And he took all these same poor metrics into last season. The production fell off hard. It was a disaster. I will say that Betts did have a stomach virus during March that cost him about 20 pounds reportedly, and then he fractured his toe early in the season that he played through for the next few months. So there is some narrative-based injury excuses that can kind of allow us to overlook some of Betts' struggles last season. But again, we have to give this guy the benefit of the doubt just because of his body of work and the strength of that Dodgers lineup and him hitting in the top third of it most likely. But I really would not ever expect him to return to that first, second round value from like any time until 2023 again. I think it's a third, fourth round pick. He probably still returns that. You might see an 850 OPS, 23 home runs, lots of runs and RBIs, high batting average. But I really think superstardom is gone for Mookie Betts, sadly. All right, now moving on to the next tier, we have Zach Neto, Bo Bichette, Geraldo Perdomo, and Corey Seager. Finally starting to get some separation of these tiers from the top of the draft. But Zach Neto was a guy that if you play in a 5x5 rotisserie league, especially the high-stakes leagues in the NFBC, he's a top 30 overall pick. He's stretching out to go ahead of Francisco Lindor and Trea Turner in lots of drafts, and like 30 picks ahead of Mookie Betts. And I think that's fair because Neto's becoming someone we could almost rely on for having a 30-30 season. Again, that gives him a huge bump in those rotisserie and category leagues you guys could play in. But if you guys are playing in points leagues, which I'm sure most of you guys are, he's at least a full tier down, hence the ranking in this video, just because the batting average, the on-base percentage lag behind the elite guys and fall down closer to the guys in this group with still some swing and miss in his game. That Angels lineup will not allow him to accumulate as many counting stats Still, this is a great hitter. I really like the adjustments he made in his swing decisions last year. That's a skill that can kind of just become plus now for Neto, especially if you can hold it through the first part of this season. We could be assured of such. Pitchers were clearly a little bit more scared of Neto last season. He saw fewer pitches in the strike zone compared to the earlier part of his career, and at the same time, he swung at a higher rate of those pitches in the zone. So while pitchers were being more careful with him, he was able to be more selective, hunt the right pitches, hence why the swing decisions are now considered elite. Also, a great development with Neto and how he gets to this really good power production is that his pulled fly ball rate has kept going up year over year. It seems like the way he got there is that he moved way up in the box, was again much more aggressive on those pitches in the zone, was going out to get the ball, going to the box with the intention of doing damage. Neto does not have elite bat speed. He does not hit the ball hard compared to some of the elite power hitters in the game, but it's really nice to see him make that adjustment, go hunt for power, pull those fly balls, take it the easy way, and kind of become this really, really strong producer. Again, if you guys play in a rotisserie categories league, move him up a big level. But if you guys play in points or on base percentage based leagues, this is where he comfortably lies behind those elite guys at the top. Another guy whose ranking will change a lot based on the types of leagues you play in, Bo Bichette, a massive, huge, blaring points league play. All the guy does is put the ball in play. He does not take his walks, but he does not care. He will hit for a high batting average. That's Bo Bichette's intention. Drive the ball the other way. And now on the Mets, he's going to hit third behind Francisco Lindor and Juan Soto. I really can't envision a much better spot in all of baseball for a hitter like Bo, who's a free swinger with a high contact rate, to be. I have some great notes here from an article on MLB.com from Thomas Harrigan, if you guys want to check that out, talking about what this spot in the lineup could do for Bo's production. Last year, Pete Alonso was the everyday three hitter on the Mets. In that, he had the highest rate of plate appearances with a runner on base of anyone in baseball, 51%. That's obscenely high. Last year, Bo Bichette only had 43% of his plate appearances with a runner on base. And again, this has outweighed importance for a hitter like Bo because he is a free swinger. He does not take walks. He goes in the box looking to hack. If guys are on base ahead of you, the pitcher can't really pitch around you and wait for you to chase as long as you have a teeny bit of discipline, which I think Bo will have. They have to come at you in the zone, and if they have to come at Bo in the zone, he will drive it somewhere. I don't know where it'll be, but that ball will be in a gap. It'll be up the middle. It could be over the fence. I think Bo Bichette's in line to have a ridiculously productive season if he can stay on the field. And just looking at the course of his career, Bo has the third biggest difference in WRC plus with runners on base compared to runners not on base. In his career, since he came up in 2019, Bo has a 144 WRC plus with runners on base and a 107 when they're not on base. So when runners are on base, he's basically one of the best hitters in the league. And with no one on, he's basically a league average guy. Again, that's the biggest jump of any player in the league. If he stays healthy, this is a 120 RBI guy with a 300 batting average. Literally, I'm trying not to exaggerate on that. In the rotisserie leagues, in the categories leagues, because he's not stealing bases, he will lag a little bit behind the elite group. But I think Bo Bichette is ready for a monster season. Again, huge stipulation if he can stay healthy. Also, he's going to pick up third base eligibility. He is the Mets third baseman. They've said that openly everywhere. It's why they signed him. That shortstop third base eligibility is a great chess piece on a roster and makes Bo a super valuable guy. Next up, we have Geraldo Perdomo, who's one of the most interesting players to rank in the whole league right now, just because what he did last year came kind of seemingly out of ridiculously nowhere. Just to remind you of those stats, Perdomo had 20 home runs, 27 stolen bases, 98 runs scored, 100 RBIs, 58 extra base hits, and a 290, 389, 462 triple slash. His career highs before last season were 6 home runs, 47 RBIs, 16 stolen bases, 30 extra base hits, and a 720 OPS. That's like laughable to say out loud. And if you guys play in a points-based fantasy league, especially ones with ESPN standard scoring, the only hitters who accumulated more points than Perdomo last season were Aaron Judge, Shohei Ohtani, Cal Raleigh, Juan Soto, and Jose Ramirez. That's the entire list. Those are the best players in baseball. They were the only ones who scored more than Perdomo in standard scoring ESPN points-based leagues. And my rankings will always skew more towards points-based leagues because I've talked to you guys. That's what you play in the most. And Perdomo's going to be an ace there because he's going to have a low strikeout rate, a really high on-base percentage, and just be very productive in the top of an order. Where at the same time, his home runs and stolen bases could lag a little bit, which will hurt him a bit in the categories rotisserie leagues. I don't think he can necessarily repeat what he did last year, but I'm in on the talent, I'm in on the underlying skills, I'm in on Perdomo being a top 10 shortstop across the board in fantasy baseball this season. Then lastly, Corey Seager. There's not much to say about Corey Seager at this point in his career. When he's on the field, he will be an elite hitter, but he will not always be on the field. That's just kind of it. It's really nice to shoehorn him into the team with the right build where you took maybe less injury risks at the top. And if you guys play in a rotisserie category league, you got yourself more stolen bases. You can afford to have a shortstop that doesn't steal in terms of roster construction. But just you kind of wish you could turn injuries off for a guy like Seager. It's just sad we can't. Those were the top 10 shortstops. If you guys play in 10-team leagues, that's where you should kind of look to the end of who should your starting shortstops be. And now moving on to this next tier, here's who you should really look to be your last shortstop if you play in a 12-team league. We have Willy Adames, Jeremy Pena, Konnor Griffin, who we're excited to talk about, Jacob Wilson, CJ Abrams. Starting off with Adames, I think the shape of his season last year is having people kind of sleep on him a little bit. He was terrible to start the year, had people panicking about that contract with the Giants. Through the end of June, he had a 210, 297, 339 triple slash with 9 homers and 4 stolen bases. That sucked. He looked like one of the biggest busts of the entire year. Then from that point to the rest of the season, he had 21 home runs, 8 stolen bases, and an 850 OPS. He became the first San Francisco Giants player since Barry Bonds. Yes, you heard me right. Barry Bonds in 2004 to have a 30 home run season, like dead ass Barry Bonds. 22 years since a guy on the Giants had 30 home runs. Adames broke that. I think he's still a very good bet for power and speed from the shortstop position. The only fear with him is a very low batting average, which coincidentally really hurts his profile in every kind of league. Points just because you're striking out more often. Rotisserie because you don't want to be a drain on that category. But he's still a really good player, one that's underrated, one I think has a much higher floor and much higher ceiling than he gets credit for at the moment. Then we have Jeremy Pena, who I think is really good, but it's hard for me to believe he's going to be as good as he was last season, which is fine. Like, I don't really expect him to be a 7-win player who's getting MVP votes, who's going to be nearly on a 25 homer, 25 stolen base pace. I think a 2020 season is very in line for Jeremy Pena, and I expect his batting average to be pretty high again, like that 280 range. His strikeout rate will be low. I really hope that walk rate continues to tick up to turn him into a more complete baseball player, but I don't know how high that on-base percentage gets, and I think that really diminishes both his floor and ceiling compared to these other just really good players we have at the shortstop position. Also, I want to call out how he performed against fastballs last year, because I think this is the crux of why he was so much more productive and something that's probably not sustainable. In 2024, he was good against fastballs, totally solid against them. 284 batting average, 400 slugging percentage. That's A-okay. Very good right there. But then last season, he had a 370 batting average and 704 slugging percentage against fastballs. He was clearly hunting that pitch, and he was more passive at the plate. Again, we see that walk rate did tick up for Pena a bit. That allowed him probably to get into more hitters' counts, get after those fastballs, so he kind of had a better idea they were coming, but he will drift closer to his mean. You're just not going to have a 700 slugging percentage against fastballs. There's no way. Now we have the fun one, Konnor Griffin. If you guys watched my top prospects video from like a week and a half ago, you know I waxed poetic. I talked about Griffin for like over 4 minutes at the top of that video. The link is in the description. But just to give you guys a skinny of that right now, he's like the best prospect we've seen in almost a decade. Last year, his first professional season, in 50 games of low A, he had 9 homers, 26 steals, a 338 average with a 536 slug. 51 games at high A, 7 home runs, 33 steals, 325 average, 510 slug. And then 21 games in Double A to close out the season, 5 home runs, 6 stolen bases, 337 batting average, 542 slug. He did that whole thing at 19 and 20 years old. He's on a crazy trajectory. You really don't see stats like this ever from a guy in the minor league, especially one this young. Like, this is Juan Soto, Bryce Harper, Julio Rodriguez, Ronald Acuna Jr. levels of superstardom, phenom prospect. And everything he did batted ball-wise really backs up that production. We have a 114 max exit velocity on him from low A, where he also had 8 batted balls hit harder than 110 miles per hour and 28 batted balls hit harder than 105 miles per hour. It's just obscene. Like, we're seeing raw power with a 100 mile per hour, 90th percentile exit velocity on par with like Bobby Witt, Fernando Tatis, Julio Rodriguez, Nick Kurtz, Rafael Devers, Juan Soto at the major league level. Like, that's the top 5% of power hitters in the league. He could be there raw power wise. We're also starting to see him fly up draft boards because he's crushing it at spring training, hitting home run after home run. He's going to force the Pirates' hand. He's going to be on that team near opening day. If he's on that team near opening day, I'm probably underranking him because of power, speed, hit tool, everything. He could step in the show and be like a 30-30 guy with like a 280 average, literally. And if he does that, he's a top 5 player at this position. He could also have a rookie year more similar to Bobby Witt Jr., who didn't take off until his second year. Again, all that's possible. Rookies are kind of hard to draft early in fantasy just because they're so inconsistent. Griffin should be enough of a phenom to kind of break through that glass ceiling and be better, kind of let us break that rule and take a rookie. But you probably want to have a plan if you want to take Konnor Griffin in your drafts. Take safer picks closer to the top. Pair Griffin with guys like Xander Bogaerts or Dansby Swanson, Willy Adames. Safe, boring shortstops you're not spending an elite pick on in this tier or the next one to get Griffin and try to reap the rewards of what could be a special rookie season, because the floor is still a guy that either spends a lot of time in the minors or just has like a 250 average of 20 homers. Again, all this possible. You want to bet on ceiling, but you only want to bet on ceiling in fantasy baseball when you're secure in your floor. So kind of manage your drafts if you're like, I got to get Konnor Griffin on my team, which sometimes you kind of want to do that because it's fun. And then quickly to close out this tier, Jacob Wilson's a point leagues king. He does not strike out, puts the ball in play ad nauseum, will run a high on base percentage. Sneaky was at a 15 homer pace last year in a real launching pad at this Souther Park in Sacramento for the A's. Also double sneaky. This might be one of the 5 best lineups in all of baseball. I really like Jacob Wilson again as a points league king. or to be a chess piece in my rotisserie categories leagues to save my batting average toward the end of my draft. Then we have CJ Abrams, who he's all over the place. Again, I skew for points leagues rankings, so that's why Abrams is way low on my list. If you guys play in a rotisserie league, Abrams probably gets to 35 or 40 stolen bases. He's like 2 tiers above, but it's just kind of hard to bet on that, especially on a guy who the hit tool has not really come around. The on-base percentage definitely has not really come around. I really still don't see him getting above like 315 there, and he won't really pile up many counting stats in a terrible Nationals lineup. Again, maybe the click just comes for CJ Abrams. He's still only 25. I can't quit this raw ability, but he's just been so inconsistent. He's not taking the step forward. I'm probably just not going to end up with CJ Abrams on many teams this year unless he starts to fall down in drafts. Lastly, quickly close out with the last tier of guys who will probably start the season on your waiver wire, but you should be considering. Trevor Story's coming off a great bounce-back season with the Red Sox last year. The on-base ability is not there, though. He's going to play every day, but he's a good guy. I'm not one I'm relying on above the guys above him. Dansby Swanson, Xander Bogaerts, your old metronomes. Xander is a good batting average play, and the stolen bases were there last year, but the home run power is probably never coming back. Dansby's like the cheapest 2020 guy you could have in a draft, but he's kind of not exciting anywhere else. And then I would like to pair one of those guys, similar to what I said before with Konnor Griffin, with some of these other exciting rookies. Either Colson Montgomery, who we saw come up last year, J.J. Weatherholt in the Cardinals, or Kevin McGonigal in the Tigers. Montgomery has stupid power, but his hit tool is so bad, I could see him going back to the minor leagues. I could also see him having like 40 homers this year. Wide range of outcomes. I like leaving some drafts in Montgomery. Weatherholt's really solid. I'm going to talk about him more in the second base preview because I think that's where he's going to play and that's where he's more valuable. Also mentioned him and McGonigal a lot in my top 10 prospect video, again, which is linked below. These guys, neither of these guys have the same ceiling right now as Konnor Griffin, but they're going to run higher averages, possibly higher on base percentages, just not without that kind of oomph power production. It also seems like both are, again, forcing their team's hands to be called up closer to opening day than we might have previously thought. Then Ezequiel Tovar, he's on the Rockies, like to stream Rockies at home, and Otto Lopez just is a guy that plays every day. But that's the end of the shortstop ranking tier list. Thank you guys so much. More fantasy baseball rankings videos coming out as we keep moving along here. I'll see you next time.